All right, so we're going to call to order at 8:44 this public hearing on the budget. Mary Ann, can you please call roll?
Mr. Gretchen?
Here.
Ms. Hruska?
Here.
Dr. King?
Here.
Mr. Moon?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Welch?
Here.
Mr. Cindy?
Here. Please identify the administrators. Please identify yourselves that are present here.
Dr. Skinka, Superintendent.
Tim McGinnis, Interim Chief Financial Officer.
Pam Bilesman, Principal.
All right, let's show also that our Board Secretary, Mary Ann Nardi, is here. A quorum being present, the President has stated that the first business before the meeting was to hold a public hearing on the budget prepared in tentative form as set forth in the minute of the meeting of the Board of Education held on August 9th. Is there any questions or discussion on the 2011-2012 budget?
I think we should allow Tim some time to go through the
Yeah, Tim, if you want, I'm sorry.
some of the adjustments.
Yeah, you have in your packet the budget that's dated September 13th. This has a number of changes in it from the August 9th budget. If you look on pages 6 and 7 of that, it lists all of the changes. And I've highlighted with an asterisk all of the items that are, for the most part, are personnel, are changes due to personnel items that you've approved either at the August 9th meeting or since then. Some of the additional individuals, the paraeducators that we've hired, there were some additional increases in biology and math, social sciences, that created some additional expense in salaries and in some cases benefits. Some of the other items in there are just things that we've seen over the past month or so that obviously weren't budgeted correctly. We didn't have a budget in there for transportation for water polo for either of those sports, even though we brought them back. We did have transportation in there for speech, which we had eliminated. The transportation for the homeless was, we found out after the August 9th meeting the number of homeless students that we have, so we know exactly what the transportation costs are going to be. So some of those types of items where we've learned more information since August 9th, those changes are also reflected in there. The total amount of the changes for all of the funds, $137,983. The tentative budget that you approved on August 9th had a deficit of $781,000. That deficit now, because of these changes, would be $920,000. There were some questions that came up with regard to the administrative cost limitation. That's an item that we've had. The administrative costs are basically the superintendent's office as well as my personal office. I mean, it doesn't include the women who work for me out in the business office. They're in a different area. The increases in cost in the executive administration, which is Dr. Skinkis's office, obviously are there because of the fact that you went from a part-time superintendent to a full-time superintendent with benefits, but that's been offset by the decreases by going from a full-time business manager to a part-time business manager without benefits. So the actual administrative costs, actual from last year to budget for this year is a decrease. So we're not exceeding that 5% limitation. There's no reason to have a public hearing. Obviously, we're not going to waive the limitation because we're under it.
Anything else, Tim?
No.
Any questions for Tim?
I just have one easy one.
Okay.
The transportation cost in water polo. I don't understand why that cost wasn't included when we talked about what it would cost to bring water polo back. So when we said we found enough money to bring water polo back, I didn't think to ask, did we find enough to cover all the components of water polo?
We did account for it, it just wasn't added in. And
Right.
even when it was on our original list, Laura, as one of the pieces to run that program. It was included, but for some reason it didn't get added on that page.
The page in the budget.
The page in the budget, yeah,
It was included in our rationale to the board.
right.
Any other questions for Tim? Tim?
You want to go first?
John, go first.
Yeah, it's just, so basically it's, the difference is $138,000. I guess my question is, I'd hate to have this happen next year. I think that's a large amount of money to, I guess, miscalculate. So I just want to make that comment.
Okay.
Okay, I think some of it is the para-educators, and think they're people that were hired after the August 9th meeting, and they were hired because of the need, you know, for those staff members that we didn't know about when we were putting the budget together.
Okay, that's most of it then?
It's almost 50%.
Well, it's a big part of it. yeah.
Okay.
It's a reflection of the incoming student body.
Right.
This special ed.
Special ed, okay.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Tim?
And we're gonna talk about the nursing
Yeah,
item later.
what I want to just clarify, since that is a closed session topic, is that you notice that on the bottom, in the event that that got approved, that would be added to the 137, if I'm not mistaken, Tim, or do we already have that accounted for from a few other areas?
No, it would be added to the 137.
Okay.
I'm going to ask my procedural question now. There's this item is 5, including visitor comments, and then 7A says adoption of budget. Are we having to do the whole complete discussion now, or will we be discussing at the adoption of the budget?
Mary Ann, it's my understanding of the practice is that we should have the discussion questions, CFO's explanations now, and then only take the formal action during old business, if that's correct.
That's how it was done in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. All right, the question I have as an administrative, the document that Laura gave us to everybody now, and we get to you, the description of what includes administrative is a lot broader than what you're saying it is. It's not just the salaries of a few people, it's got 6 different functions, and includes other salaries, employee benefits, purchase service, supplies and materials, capital outlay, non-capitalized, that fit into those functions. So my concern is, did you use the proxy of the salaries, because it's by far the biggest part of it, to determine we're under the 5%? Is that, because you have to actually do a report we have to submit in a couple of months with the proper information to show that we're not over 5%, right?
Right, maybe I didn't state it correctly.
Okay.
But there are about 6 different areas that are included in that, but the only 2 that we have budgeted are executive administration, which is Kevin's office.
Okay.
And then the 2510, which includes me.
Okay.
But when I compared the expenditures, I compared all the expenditures.
Okay.
So it's salary, benefits, supplies, services, etc.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that.
All right. Any other?
Is somebody's phone going on?
Is somebody's phone going?
Dialing? Mags?
Right, so.
All right. Seeing none, I want to,
Oh, the last, I'm going to ask one more, because I thought you
Good.
would address some of this. What about the real estate tax revenue? I mean, the last budget you had, last draft, it showed a 6.4% increase. The new draft, it shows a 5.8% increase. And it says the amount is $952, which includes all funds, but I couldn't figure out a number any way of manipulating the numbers to do that. In fact, the one fund,
What page are we on, Mr. McGinnis?
Well, I think
it's in his,
it's in the assumption.
in the assumptions.
And do you want to, I know we talked about that this morning, you want to talk a little bit how you figured
Yeah.
that out?
Well, the numbers that were in there last month, the 6.4%, those were incorrect. Okay, the 5.8% are the correct numbers. That's a combination that includes all of the entire budget for all the real estate taxes. So it's the money coming in. It's also the refunds. So there's that are included in there. Part of it is the question about the cost, the limitation about the CPI. The real estate taxes for bond and interest, there is no limit. And I think if you look,
Oh, that answers part of the question.
because it's based on whatever the payments are going to be
I think you said that.
for that year. So if you look at the bond and interest, real estate taxes, the current year number is going from 3 million to 3,000,003, which is 10%. The prior year is going from 2,000,004 to 3,000,005, so it's a huge increase, just because the payments that are due in this next year are higher than they were this past year, so the county assesses higher real estate taxes to cover those payments that are due.
Okay,
Just for historical purposes, what page are you reading from?
I'm sorry, on page 13,
Okay.
it gives the revenue.
In case anyone's watching live and doesn't have the document but wants to take a note for later.
then just to answer, if you can, the last, thank you, and you did say that before. But it says that the real estate revenue, including refunds from all funds, increased, forget the percentage, for 952,000, but you show an increase for the debt service alone at 1.6 million. On page 13, if you add those three figures up.
Okay, what I can do is I can go through and come up with a spreadsheet that highlights each individual fund and what the taxes are.
Well, again,
and how
they just-
I came up with the 952.
Okay, because I looked at them all, and I mean, that one's over that, and there's no credits on them, so I just think it should be accurate what we state in here.
Anything else?
No. Thank
I
you.
had a question on, so when we're saying the debt service,
What page you on?
on 3, and we're bringing that into our revenue, that $6 million? Is that from bonds that we sold, or working cash bonds, or?
The revenue on here for the debt service is basically, it's the tax revenue. It's the amount of real estate taxes that are being assessed by the county based on the amount of money that's due on the bonds that were issued, yes. When we issued the bonds, there was a schedule of how much we were going to pay each year. The county has that schedule, so they assess the taxes to cover the payments that are due each year, principal and interest.
But now we have to pay back a portion of that, right? So it's not really all income.
When
Well,
you,
this is-
for example, when you built this building, you sold
Yeah.
these bonds and
Right.
created this large amount of cash that came in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They are payable over time, many years. But it's not an equal payment over time. Some of the bond schedules have higher payments in some years and lower payments in others. So this increase for this year represents one of those higher years. We collect the tax, the county collects the tax and gives it to us, and then we go on December 1st and make the payment on the bond.
So this little bubble here is really not for our educational operating.
It's not an operating fund at all.
No, it's
So
just,
when we talk about
It says
operating
non-operating
funds,
on top.
well, I know, but when we see that figure on the bottom, the 26 million, I kept trying to, we kind of included into our overall monies, but it's not really money we can use for education or anything.
it's not an operating fund at all.
No.
So,
It just says all funds, it doesn't say operating fund.
yeah.
Just totaling the operating and non-operating funds
So,
together.
so you see in the middle of page 3 where it says total operating funds?
Right.
You separate your operating funds from these other funds.
I guess my problem was because when I saw the bottom, the 26,000, but then when you go to page 2, the page before that, and we look at the grand total of monies coming into the district, and if you go to the very last column on the right side, and you go all the way to the bottom, it looks like there's 26 million coming in that we have.
There is 26
Yes.
million coming in.
We have to count that as a revenue.
Okay.
It comes in from the treasurer's
and then goes out as an
office.
expenditure.
When you're paying the tax bill where our revenue comes from, that's part of the tax.
All right.
So for accounting purposes, we do have to count that as a revenue.
Okay.
So for example, last year, we didn't collect that debt service money until December 22nd. However, we had to pay out on the bonds December 1st. That's a problem. That's a cash flow problem.
Because that has a due date, the payment has a due date.
But in general, you should be collecting approximately the amount of money that needs to go out on December 1st, according to the bond schedules. that have been in place and are in place, and will be in place until 2026.
Any other questions? Tim?
Yeah, along those lines, I brought this issue up a month or two ago about looking into refinancing these bonds and the possibility of that. Are we looking into that, or can we put that on the agenda to talk about sometime, or have a report?
I did talk to Elizabeth Hennessy at William F. Blair. Some of these aren't, some of the bonds are not callable until for another year or two. She also said that the interest rates really aren't that much lower now or better now than they were when we actually issued the bonds.
I find that hard to believe.
Okay.
I mean, interest rates are a lot lower than they were.
Okay, we can look into it further.
Yeah, please look into that.
How about we put that on the finance committee agenda? So we'll generate a report to the advisory council.
I wouldn't take her word for it. I mean, she makes money, you know, whatever. Let's do some
I agree.
diligence.
Except they make money by
refinancing.
refinancing.
Yeah, I
more
don't
Well,
know
than-
what
they-
motivation
well,
she'd have to not do.
I'm just saying, let's get an independent review.
Fair enough.
Anything else? Okay, seeing none, we're sending it out to the visitors to comment on the 2011-2012 budget for our public hearing. Anybody want to speak on this side?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Please state your name and then.
My name's Mary Ann Liebrandt. I live in Brookfield, Illinois, and I'm the parent of 2 daughters who have graduated from this fine school. Now that the school board is putting out and voting on its final budget, there are many of us who are saddened to see that once again it is a deficit budget. And we would like to know, in what way are you going to rearrange and put out to the public your long-term financials and project forward for the public? We would like to have communication with all of you as to be part of this conversation of where we want our school to go as well. We know these are economically hard times. We've all had to make hard decisions on this board, and we will continue to do so, but we are already in September now. You're going to be voting on a budget that's in deficit. The public would like to know, what is your conversation on long-term, long-range financials? We would like to know those projections as soon as possible, because that in turn it directs us to what your goals are going to be for this school. So I just wanted to put that question out to you and hope in consideration that you would be very timely in it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Mary.
Anybody else on this side like to speak? All right, seeing none at 9. Oh,
Jim wants to speak.
I'm Marciniak, I live in Riverside. When this board was seated on April 28th, you had a lot of difficult tasks in front of you, and coming up with the 2011-2012 budget was not one of them. Like the radio commercial says, it was the biggest no-brainer in the history of Earth. There was a plan for what was going to happen in the event of a referendum loss, and yes, boy, did the referendum lose. I'm not happy about that, but as a board member, I was prepared to go forward with the plan that we shared with the public about what was going to happen after this referendum lost. I think the expectation from the public, evidenced by an 80-20 referendum loss, is balance your budget, restore your district to financial health. So what are we looking at here in terms of a draft budget? What is it now, a $900,000 deficit? The last public copy I saw was 700 something. Underwater plus underwater equals deeper underwater. That's the smell of reserve money burning. That was supposed to stop. I thought that was going to stop when we got this new era of fiscal responsibility on this board. How are we trying to balance the budget? By placing new taxes on families. When a school board charges money for the funds to put on its programs, that's taxes, folks. That's not fees, that's taxes. And who are you taxing? You're taxing the families that just happen to have kids of the right age to be attending this high school right now. Not the ones who graduated last year, 10 years ago, or will graduate 10 years in the future. With pay to participate, your budget says you're going to recover $66,000 some dollars of that. You know, we did a referendum that was looking for $4.4 million to continue operating this district at the quality we've become accustomed to. So for $66,000, you place new taxes on these families. And that's for the lucky ones. That's for the athletic haves. Those are the ones who still have a program that they can write a check for. Meanwhile, the academic and artistic have-nots get to crawl to you for permission to put on their programs this year. And as we just heard during visitor comments, they get to do that crawling in the dark. This is not acceptable. I don't know what you're thinking. And finally, administrative raises. After all of that, after all we've done to try to keep dollars in the classroom, and after all the dollars that are being drained from the classroom right now, drained from kids' programs and things about this school district that we do to enrich kids' lives, dollars for administrators. Now, frankly, I'm stumped. There was a plan. I don't understand what happened here, but you failed to execute. I hope to see some improvement.
Anybody else want to speak on this side? Okay, at 9:05 p.m., I declare that the public hearing on the budget completed and stated that the meeting would proceed with the first order of business being the completion of those items on the agenda pertaining to the, well, we need to go and pay the consent. We can do the adoption of the budget right now. With the first order of business being completion of those items on the agenda pertaining to the budget. So we're going to jump to old business adoption A, adoption of the 2011-2012 budget. And the person making the motion will need to make the resolution, read the resolution out. Anybody?
Starting with whereas.
Yeah.
Whereas the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, County of Cook, State of Illinois, caused to be prepared and adopted a final budget for the 2011-2012 school year, and the Secretary of this Board has made the budget conveniently available, and whereas the Illinois Revised Statute 105 ILCS 5/17-7 allows local boards authority to charge certain facility costs to the Operations and Maintenance Fund until such time as repealed by a successor board. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of said district at all costs for custodial salaries, heating, fuel, water costs of certain custodial supplies and equipment, and all fees for architectural and engineering services shall be charged annually against the Operations and Maintenance Fund.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Tim Walsh. Any discussion?
When we vote on this, there was one more thing in closed session. If we say no, that doesn't go on this budget.
Correct.
Okay. I just
No,
want to
we-
make sure that we're not
no, we
being
addressed it.
obligated to that. Okay.
No, we addressed that.
All right, Mary Ann?
Ms. Hruska?
Yes.
Dr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Grisham?
Yes.
Mr. Cindy?
Yes. And then we have the resolution in the front for the whole budget. Do I have a motion for that one?
Resolution adopting the 2011-2012 budget.
Yep.
There's two different ones. You have to write one.
The one's for the operating and maintenance fund, and this is for the total
But
budget.
there were two with different
The one with
forms.
section 1 and section 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, County of Cook, State of Illinois, caused to be prepared in tentative form a budget, and the Secretary of this Board has made the same conveniently available to the public for inspection for at least 30 days prior to final action thereon. Whereas a public hearing was held as to such budget on the 13th day of September 2011. Notice of said hearing was given at least 30 days prior thereto as required by law, and all the legal requirements have been complied with. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of said district as follows, that the fiscal year of the school district be, and the same hereby is fixed and declared to be beginning July 1, 2011 and ending June 30, 2012. Section 2, that the following budget contain an estimate of amounts available in each fund separately and of expenditures from each. Be, and the same is hereby adopted as the budget of this school district for said fiscal year.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dan Moon. Any discussion? Mary Ann?
Dr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Goodson?
Yes.
Ms. Hruska?
Yes.
Mr. Sindi?
Yes.